room. So, regardless of what else happens, you'll still be at the same point in the distribution of extroversion. Or if you're one of the most introverted people in the room, you'll still be one of the more introverted people in the room across decades. That's correlational stability. Now, the other thing that you might be interested in as a personality change thing is actually the mean levels. And this would be a very extreme picture, but you could have perfect correlational stability if everybody in this diagram maps onto everybody in this distribution the same way I've shown so far. As long as everybody is in the same relative position, you've got absolutely perfect correlational stability. Not going to happen, but that would be like correlation 1. But you could have, as we've drawn here, like the entire group is now more extroverted than the entire group was at time 1.
How do you know? What are you looking at?
Because the whole distribution has moved.
What are you measuring though?
Let's say we're measuring extroversion. So this is low extroversion time 1, high extroversion time 1, low extroversion time 2,
Oh, I see.
high extroversion time 2.
So you're saying the whole group is now...
So the whole group, everybody, I mean this also would like never happen, right? But everybody at time 2 is now more extroverted, and a lot more extroverted than they were at time 1. So you have huge mean level change, but also near perfect, in this totally made up example, correlational stability. The closer your correlational stability gets to 0, what it means is that knowing where somebody is at time 1 tells you nothing at all about where they are at time 2. So it's just completely independent. You can get, of course, like anything in between. And most of the stuff that you end up looking at would probably vary between about 0 and maybe 0.6, 0.7. So you'd still have, some moving around, but quite a bit of stability.
What do you call this second thing? Mean?
Mean level stability. So, and one of the things that's just mathematically true about correlations is that correlations are completely impervious to completely ignore any kind of linear transformations. You can add any number to a variable, you can multiply it by anything, you can divide it by anything, you can subtract anything. So everybody could be 10 times as extroverted 10 years from now, but as long as everybody is 10 times as extroverted as they were at time 1, you've got perfect correlational stability. Go back to the history. Keep this in mind. Yeah. Okay, so early personality research, and even more so theories of early personality, were psychoanalytic, and then moved through various generations of successors to psychoanalysis, psychodynamic theory, ego psychology. Erik Erikson, who gets a lot of play in gerontology, was one of the ego psychologists from the mid-20th century. From Freud up until about the mid-20th century, when Erikson started writing, there was also this idea that personality, in their terms, was kind of formed about age 5 or so, and then nothing very interesting happened after that. What Erikson was actually known for, outside of gerontology, was pushing that up to adolescence and young adulthood. And his books that, it always intrigues me how little attention people in gerontology seem to pay to this, but the original sources that people cite for Ericksonian theory are called Childhood and Society and Identity, Youth, and Crisis. These were books about later childhood and adolescence and young adulthood. They weren't books about aging. He did get more explicitly interested in aging later on in his life, and his wife carried some of that on. And in case you're wondering, there's very little research actually looking at Ericksonian stages. What little there is shows virtually no correspondence between major characteristics that ought to be associated with things like intimacy, generativity, integrity, etc., and your actual age. So they do see that you can measure them. There are individual differences, but you see a lot of variation on people in young adulthood, middle age, later life. Not much evidence for anything like an actual stage progression. And in general, stage theories of personality pretty much died out. They live on in theoretical form and therapy theories, but as a research endeavor, they pretty much have withered away for lack of support. Among other things, the behavioral approaches to psychology really emphasize situational differences rather than trait-like individual differences that were consistent across situations. And so, because behaviorism was, theoretically is about environmental contingencies, you do a lot of environmental analysis. You look at how different environments reinforce or punish different kinds of behaviors. And the strongest form, and kind of the radical behaviorism of Skinner and Watson before Skinner, you don't think it matters who the person is. It's all about the environment, and it's all about the environmental contingencies. And if you can control the environment, you can make anybody do anything. And up until something like the 80s, even for people that were kind of interested in individual differences in personality, the research that was accumulating was showing not very good stability on a lot of measures of personality over more than a month or two at a time. Better predictions of most outcomes from situational factors than individual differences factors. And a whole morass of measurement issues. We'll come back to a bit in a minute. And personality research came pretty close to dying out for all of these reasons. There was a little bit of a shift, and some of this still goes on. Behavioral theorists, and particularly social learning theorists, who a more social psych kind of form of learning theory inspired approaches to thinking about people and individual differences, kind of moved other kinds of individual difference variables like self-efficacy, attributions of control, locus of control variables, and things like that. Some of which have popped up in various forms in a lot of gerontology research, especially around health behavior issues and health improvement kind of issues. Although there's a big sub-theme in a lot of that research too, that self-efficacy and control kind of variables are much more consistent and also much more predictive of behavior when they're very narrowly focused. So if you want to know something about health, you ask people about their health self-efficacy beliefs or their health control beliefs, not about their general control beliefs and expect it to be about health. So you still have this kind of real focus on specificity of what you're interested in. And then you had this group of people primarily centering on Paul Costa and Robert McRae at the National Institutes of Aging, who